The Type 093B Shang III represents China's first nuclear-powered attack submarine designed from the keel up to serve as a guided missile platform, a shift formally acknowledged by the Pentagon's 2023 assessment that classified the variant as an SSGN. Satellite imagery captured at the Huludao shipyard and scrutinized by the open-source intelligence community reveals a vertical launch system embedded amidships, marking the first time a Chinese attack submarine has carried dedicated standoff strike tubes independent of its forward torpedo room. Depending on the source consulted, the cell count ranges from 12 to as many as 24 tubes, a salvo density sufficient to saturate layered fleet defenses or deliver a clandestine land attack barrage. This configuration transforms the vessel from a pure anti-submarine or anti-surface warfare asset into a multi-mission strike platform, whose primary value lies not in chasing enemy submarines, but in threatening high-value surface combatants and fixed infrastructure from outside the detection envelope of escorting forces. The hull that houses this weaponry also reflects a deliberate effort to close the acoustic gap, incorporating a pump jet propulsor and faired sail-to-hull transitions that analysts estimate place its broadband signature between the Los Angeles Flight 1 and Flight 3 benchmarks. Community data circulating in open-source simulations attributes multiple potential weapons to the Type 093B, and the uncertainty as to which missile actually rides in its tubes is itself a strategic factor. The YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missile, a subsonic to supersonic weapon lineage traced to the Russian 3M54 Club family, remains the most established submarine-launched option and has been tested from Shang-class torpedo tubes since the mid-2010s, providing a baseline anti-surface reach estimated at several hundred kilometers. What if the payload is instead the YJ-19, an air-breathing hypersonic cruise missile publicly displayed at China's 2025 Victory Day parade and designed explicitly for launch from standard 533mm torpedo tubes? Such a Mach 10 weapon, if fielded, would compress a defender's engagement timeline to fewer than 20 seconds from horizon acquisition to impact and give every Type 093B a credible carrier-killing capability without the need for vertical launch modifications. Beyond that lies the YJ-21, a ballistic trajectory hypersonic weapon already operational on Type 055 destroyers and H-6K bombers, whose compatibility with the Type 093B's VLS geometry remains unconfirmed, but whose potential deployment would extend China's maritime strike umbrella to ranges well beyond 1,000 kilometers. The ambiguity itself serves a deterrence function, forcing planners to account for the worst-case weapon rather than the confirmed one. Speed, depth, and the ocean's thermal structure combine to give a moderately quiet submarine survival options that a louder boat cannot exploit. And the Type 093B is credited with a maximum submerged speed in excess of 30 knots. When a trailing adversary closes to torpedo range, a transient high-speed dash may momentarily blind the hunter's passive arrays with cavitation noise, allowing the escaping boat to use that interval of acoustic clutter to cross a thermal boundary and vanish into a different sound propagation regime. The Western Pacific's thermoclines are deeper and more sharply defined than those in shallower marginal seas, which is precisely why an SSGN designed for open ocean operations gravitates toward them. A submarine loitering at slow speed beneath a strong thermal layer presents a target whose tonal leakage is refracted downward, away from surface-ducted sonobuoy fields, while ambient biological and seismic noise raises the background floor against which any remaining signature must be discriminated. The practical result is that detection ranges compress from the theoretical maxima quoted in community databases to something far shorter, measured in single-digit nautical miles if the gradient is steep enough, and a submarine that can exploit multiple thermoclines and seamount shadows forces the attacker to solve a target motion analysis problem across distorted acoustic paths. The United States Navy's submarine force earned its silent service sobriquet by executing a core Cold War mission, shadowing every Soviet ballistic missile submarine from bastion to patrol ground, and holding it at risk of destruction should strategic warning be received. That mission rested on twin pillars of acoustic superiority and a numerical advantage sufficient to assign 1 or 2 SSNs per target, and it shaped decades of investment in quieten and towed array processing. A guided missile submarine like the Type 093B does not behave like an SSBN. It does not follow predictable patrol boxes. Its mission set takes it wherever the target leads, and its ability to sustain high-speed transits allows it to reposition across hundreds of nautical miles between satellite overpass periods. The U.S. multi-layer anti-submarine warfare architecture, fixed sensor networks, SIRTAS surveillance ships, Virginia-class SSNs, and airborne P-8A patrols remains the most capable in the world, but it was optimized to track a smaller number of noisier platforms with well-understood operating patterns. A growing fleet of quiet, fast SSGNs dispersed unpredictably across the Pacific Basin forces that architecture to stretch across a vastly wider search area for a target set that does not announce itself at long range, transforming the doctrinal task from surgical shadowing to wide-area surveillance. To situate the Type 093B within the global hierarchy, one useful reference is the Russian Navy's PLA-885M Yasen M, the contemporary platform widely regarded as the benchmark for combining acoustic stealth with heavy hypersonic payload. Community data attributes to the Yasen M a maximum speed of 35 knots, an operating depth of 600 meters, and a sonar suite whose MGK-600 amphora system provides spherical bow, flank, and towed array coverage with passive detection ranges exceeding 100 kilometers. Its primary hypersonic punch comes from the 3M-22 Zircon, a ship-launched weapon credited with speeds of Mach 8 to 9 and ranges up to 1,300 kilometers. The Type 093B does not match the Yasen M on depth or sheer acoustic refinement, and its signature is still estimated to sit above the threshold where first detection advantage can be presumed against a Virginia in open water. However, if the Chinese boat has achieved even 70% of the Yasen M's quieting performance, a plausible assumption given the pump jet and reactor upgrades, the U.S. Navy must then field proportionally more sensor assets to maintain coverage across the expanded patrol areas a larger fleet can occupy, creating a dynamic of economic attrition that favors the side investing in quantity and incremental quality over the one defending a static technical high-water mark. Perhaps the most strategically disruptive implication of a Chinese SSGN fleet lies not in its ability to duel warships, but in the target sets it forces the United States to defend. Logistics vessels such as fast combat support ships, fleet oilers, and expeditionary sea bases routinely operate without dedicated anti-submarine escorts, transiting predictable routes between forward hubs like Guam, Okinawa, and Darwin. A single Type 093B positioned along those sea lines of communication could, in principle, strike a replenishment vessel from standoff range and then reposition before airborne ASW assets could localize its launch datum, and the loss of a single fleet oiler would ground a carrier air wing within days by starving it of jet fuel. China's military analysts have studied U.S. Navy logistics dependencies carefully since the 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis, and targeting softer, less defended ships also reduces dependence on exotic hypersonic weapons whose operational availability remains uncertain. A baseline YJ-18 cruise missile, a mature and proven system, is entirely adequate against a civilian crewed replenishment vessel, which means the submarine does not need a magazine full of developmental hypersonics to impose strategically significant costs. This reality lowers the threshold for effective action and makes the Type 093B's deterrent value robust to the exact missile configuration, provided at least one credible anti-ship option is present in its loadout. The Type 093B, taken in isolation, is a capable but transitional SSGN, quieter than its predecessors, armed with a first-generation vertical launch battery, and plausibly hypersonic depending on which intelligence assessment one privileges. Considered as the leading edge of a fleet-wide transformation, however, it represents something larger. The first Chinese nuclear submarine whose design DNA encodes the assumption that undersea platforms are not merely escorts or ambush predators, but distributed arsenals, capable of shaping the maritime battlespace from positions of relative sanctuary. That assumption, once embedded in fleet architecture, generates requirements that point directly toward the Type 095 and eventually toward a nuclear-powered guided missile submarine that matches the acoustic performance and weapon flexibility of the best boats in the American and Russian inventories. The silent service will not be rendered irrelevant by this evolution, but its operational patterns are being forced to shift in ways that dilute its traditional mission focus. Whereas once an SSN could be assigned a single high-value target and expected to maintain covert trail for weeks, the proliferation of quiet, fast SSGNs now demands that the same fleet allocate scarce hull days to broad-area surveillance, choke point patrols, and surge response across an ocean basin whose sheer size rewards the side that can field more platforms. The Type 093B is not the boat that will close every gap between the Chinese submarine force and the U.S. Navy, but it is the boat that has opened a new phase of competition in which quality, quantity, and operational creativity contend on terms that neither submariner corps has yet fully mapped.